On the coldest night of December, a 17-year-old girl with $23, no home, and no safety faced a choice that could have ended her life or saved someone else's. Jasmine Brooks had nothing, no family, no warm clothes, no place to sleep. But when she found an elderly woman collapsing in the snow, confused, freezing, and calling out for a daughter who wasn't there, Jasmine made a decision no one expected. She took off her only jacket, wrapped the woman in her dead grandmother's blanket, and held her through 8 hours of deadly cold, knowing she might die doing it. But what happened next? No one could have predicted it. This is the story of a night that saved 2 lives and created a family from complete strangers. At 17, Jasmine had already learned what it meant to disappear, that Chicago's winter wind didn't care that she was just a girl with only $23, a thin jacket, and a frayed blanket that once belonged to her grandmother, the only person who had ever loved her without conditions. The system had aged her out 2 months ago, and the world seemed perfectly content to forget she existed. Tonight, the wealthy streets of the Gold Coast shimmered with Christmas lights, warm yellow glows behind windows she'd never been invited to stand behind. People walked past her without seeing her, as if homelessness made her transparent. She tugged her thin blanket closer around her shoulders, praying she'd make it through the night. But then she heard it, that a soft, broken sob carried by the cold wind. Jasmine froze. She knew better than to get involved. At night, danger lived in every shadow. Survival meant keeping your head down and your heart closed. But the sound came again, older, weaker, terrified. Her feet moved before her mind could argue. In the dark corner of a silent street, she found her, an elderly woman leaning against a brick wall, arms shaking violently, eyes unfocused. Her gray hair was tangled, her coat half-buttoned, shoes wet from the snow. She looked lost. She looked alone. "Ma'am?" Jasmine whispered. The woman blinked, confused. I don't know where I live." Jasmine's heart dropped. She recognized the signs instantly. Disorientation, panic, searching for memories that refused to come. It was the same look her grandmother had in her final years. The cold was getting worse. If she stayed here, she would freeze. Jasmine took a breath, made a decision no one would ever expect from a girl the world didn't care about. She took the woman's freezing hand. "Don't worry," she said softly. "I won't leave you, even if it meant risking her own life to save a stranger." Jasmine didn't think. She acted. The cold bit into her fingers as she tugged off her thin jacket and draped it over Margaret's shaking shoulders. The woman flinched at first, then leaned toward the unfamiliar warmth like a child seeking shelter. "You'll freeze," Margaret whispered, voice trembling. "I'm okay." Jasmine lied. She wasn't. But the old woman wouldn't survive 5 more minutes without help. The wind sliced through Jasmine's thin shirt, igniting shivers that rattled her bones. She unwrapped her grandmother's blanket, her last memory of warmth, safety, and softness, and wrapped it around both of them. Margaret sagged into her, exhausted. "Come on," Jasmine murmured, scanning the empty street for anything that could help. Behind a restaurant, she spotted a narrow metal grate humming with faint heat. It wasn't enough to keep someone comfortable, but maybe enough to keep someone alive. She guided Margaret to it, bracing the older woman with her shoulder. Each step felt heavier, as if the cold was hooking into Jasmine's joints, slowing her down. When they reached the grate, warm air whispered against their legs. Jasmine lowered them both to the ground, pulling the blanket tighter around their bodies, sealing every scrap of heat inside. But the temperature was still plummeting. 0.15 degrees, 0.14, 0.13. Jasmine knew this because cold had taught her its language. Margaret's teeth chattered uncontrollably. "It's so dark. I don't know where I am." "It's okay," Jasmine whispered, rubbing the woman's hands even though her own fingers felt like glass. "You're not alone. I'm here." To keep her awake, Jasmine started talking. Anything, everything, weaving little pieces of herself into the freezing air. "When I was little, my grandma Rose used to wrap me in this blanket. Said it was made with love. That love was the strongest heat in the world." She smiled faintly. I didn't believe her, but maybe she was right. Margaret blinked slowly, trying to focus. You're a sweet girl. Jasmine shook her head, just doing what she'd want. The hours crawled. Margaret drifted in and out, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in a fog of fear and confusion. At one point, she grabbed Jasmine's hand fiercely. Don't leave me, she whispered, eyes wide with terror. I won't, Jasmine promised. I won't go anywhere. Even though her body was beginning to betray her, the night deepened, the city asleep behind glass walls and locked doors. Snow settled on their blanket, soft and silent, dusting Jasmine's hair like frost. Her breath thickened, slowing. Her shivers began to weaken, then fade altogether. That was bad. Very bad. She knew hypothermia stages, first shivering, then numbness, then warmth, that false, deadly warmth, then nothing. Her fingers had gone stiff. She couldn't feel her toes. Her vision blurred around the edges, like she was falling into a tunnel. Stay with me, she murmured, though she wasn't sure who she was talking to anymore. Margaret, herself, or her grandmother's memory. Margaret's head slumped sideways. Rose, she mumbled. Is that you? Jasmine let out a weak laugh. No, but she'd like you. Her voice cracked. She rested her cheek against the top of Margaret's head. The old woman's hair smelled faintly like lavender and snow. I made her a promise, Jasmine whispered. When she died, she told me. Jasmine, the world will try to make your heart cold. Don't let it. Her eyes fluttered. The blanket felt heavier. The darkness felt softer. I kept it, Grandma, she breathed, her voice barely audible. I stayed kind. Snowflakes drifted down, landing on Jasmine's eyelashes. She didn't blink them away. Margaret trembled violently, then went still. Jasmine tried to move her arms. Nothing. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Her head dipped forward, her body slumping under the weight of exhaustion and frozen air. For one terrifying moment, she wondered if this was where she'd end, out on a frozen street corner, wrapped around a stranger, keeping a promise no one would ever know she kept. Her breath thinned, slowed, faded. The snow kept falling, covering their shoes, their legs, their arms, their blanket. Their world, two forgotten souls under a winter shroud. One girl who had nothing left to give, and still gave everything. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky had begun to pale, a thin blue barely strong enough to touch the snow-covered streets. The world was quiet, still, unaware of the miracle and the tragedy. Lying near a tiny heating vent behind a restaurant, a car door slammed somewhere in the distance. Then hurried footsteps crunched over snow. Mom? Mom! A woman's voice broke through the frigid morning. Desperate, panicked. Catherine Beaumont stumbled into the alley, still wearing her silk nightgown under a heavy coat, her hair wild, her breath coming in heavy sobs. She had been searching since 4 a.m. Police cars had swept the area. Neighbors had been woken, every security camera alerted, but nothing prepared her for the sight she found. Her mother, her elegant, gentle Margaret, curled in the arms of a teenage girl, both buried under a blanket stiffened by frost. No, Mom. Catherine dropped to her knees, lifting the blanket with shaking hands. Jasmine's lips were blue, her eyelashes crusted with ice. Her breath was shallow, barely there. Margaret stirred weakly, whispering, Rose? Mom, it's me, Catherine cried. It's Catherine. Oh God, you're freezing. Stay with me. Jasmine tried to speak. Her throat felt like sandpaper. She forced out a whisper that cracked in the cold. I couldn't leave her. Catherine froze. Those 5 words were the only reason Margaret was alive. Paramedics arrived seconds later. Hands lifted Jasmine away. Oxygen masks were pressed to faces, blankets wrapped around shaking limbs. Catherine held her mother's hand as they were rushed into the ambulance. But her eyes kept drifting over and over to the unconscious girl who had saved her mom. The girl who shouldn't have survived the night, and nearly didn't. The hospital, when Jasmine opened her eyes, the world was white. Too white. Beeping machines. Warm blankets. A drip in her arm. Her heart began to race. Hospitals meant bills. Bills meant trouble. Trouble meant police. and police had never been her friend. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her chest and a nurse gently pressed her back down. Easy. You're safe. Safe? Jasmine didn't know what that meant. Then a second voice entered the room, firm yet soft. You're awake. Catherine stood in the doorway, her eyes swollen from crying, her coat still dusted with snow. Behind her, two police officers hovered. Jasmine squeezed her eyes shut. This was it. They were going to charge her, trespassing, theft, something. That's how the world worked for kids like her. I didn't hurt her, Jasmine whispered, voice trembling. I swear. I was just trying to help. One of the officers stepped forward. Hurt her, he said gently. Kid, you saved her life. Jasmine blinked, confused. The officer nodded. You kept her awake. You protected her. If not for you, she wouldn't have made it to sunrise. Catherine swallowed hard and took a shaky step closer. I saw the security footage, she said softly. The restaurants, the shops, every camera you passed while trying to keep my mother warm. Her eyes welled. You held her when she cried. You took off your jacket for her. You talked to her all night so she wouldn't slip into the dark. Jasmine stared at her, stunned, and no one had ever looked at her with gratitude before. Not like this. Not with love. A new offer later that afternoon, after doctors confirmed Jasmine was stable, Catherine asked the officers for a moment alone. She pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. Where do you live, sweetheart? Jasmine hesitated. I don't. Catherine's heart tightened. And your family? Just my grandmother. A pause. She's gone. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Catherine reached out, carefully, as if afraid Jasmine might flinch. You saved my mother's life, she said. I want to offer you something. A place to stay. Our guest house is empty. You'd have your own room, bathroom, everything. Jasmine shook her head immediately. I can't. I don't want to cause trouble. Rich people don't keep girls like me around for long. Catherine smiled sadly. You think I'm offering charity? Jasmine looked away. No, Catherine whispered. I'm offering gratitude. Safety. A home. Her voice broke. Let me help you, the way you helped my mother. Jasmine's throat tightened. No one had ever insisted on helping her, and no one had ever fought to keep her. I don't belong in a mansion, Jasmine murmured. You belong anywhere kindness lives, Catherine said. And my mother is alive today because of you. That makes you family. Tears burned behind Jasmine's eyes. Tears she hadn't allowed herself in years. Okay, she whispered. Just don't change your mind. Catherine took her hand. I won't. A new world 2 days later. Jasmine stepped into the Beaumont mansion. Marble floors. Warm lights. The smell of cinnamon drifting from the kitchen. Her chest tightened with fear. Homes like this were fragile. They could disappear if she breathed too loudly. She moved into the guest house, but slept sitting up the first night, afraid the soft bed was a mistake she'd be asked to leave. Every sound made her jump. Every kindness made her flinch. But Catherine kept her word. She checked on her every morning, left hot cocoa at her door, bought her clothes she didn't dare touch at first. And on the third day, Jasmine finally met Margaret again. The old woman sat in her favorite chair, wrapped in a soft shawl. When she saw Jasmine, her eyes brightened. Oh, she said, smiling with a clarity she hadn't had in days. The brave girl. Jasmine approached slowly. Margaret. Margaret reached for her hand with surprising strength. Your grandmother raised you right. Jasmine's breath caught, and no praise had ever hit so deeply, because it came from someone who reminded her of the woman she loved most. Margaret squeezed her fingers. You stayed when most wouldn't. You protected someone who couldn't protect herself. That's the kind of heart the world needs more of. Jasmine looked down, blinking fast. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. She felt valued. She felt wanted. And she didn't even know that soon, very soon, this moment would change a billionaire's life too. The first week in the Beaumont mansion felt like living inside a dream Jasmine wasn't sure she deserved. Every morning she woke expecting it to disappear, expecting someone to tell her the room wasn't hers, the bed wasn't hers, the warmth wasn't hers. She slept with her shoes on for the first 3 nights, certain she'd have to run. Safety was a foreign language, and she didn't speak it yet. Catherine never pushed her. She simply appeared in small, gentle ways, knocking lightly before entering, leaving a mug of hot cocoa on the porch railing, asking what Jasmine liked for breakfast, even though Jasmine never knew what to answer. But Catherine was quietly working on something bigger. 2 weeks after the hospital, she handed Jasmine a folder. "I'm filing for temporary guardianship," she said softly. "Only if you want it." Jasmine's throat tightened. "You want to be responsible for me?" Catherine smiled. "Oh, sweetheart, I already feel responsible for you." Jasmine didn't know how to respond. She nodded, barely. But it was enough that a new brother, Catherine's son, David, flew in from college the following weekend. A tall, easygoing 18-year-old with a smile like sunlight and a habit of talking too fast, he burst into the guest house without knocking, arms full of grocery bags. "Mom told me everything. You're the girl who saved Grandma." Jasmine nearly dropped the mug she was holding. I only nope," he interrupted, shaking his head. "You're a hero." End of debate. Hero has she been called many things in her life, but never that. From that day on, David treated her like a sibling, teaching her how to play video games, blasting music in the kitchen while cooking, knocking on her door to ask if she wanted to watch movies. He didn't tiptoe around her past. He didn't pity her, he simply liked her, and that was more unfamiliar than any mansion could ever be. Building herself back up 3 weeks after moving in, Catherine found Jasmine studying the ingredients label on a cereal box like it was a textbook. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Jasmine hesitated. I never finished school." Catherine didn't blink. "Then we'll fix that." Within days, Jasmine was meeting with a private tutor 3 times a week. They started at the basics, math she hadn't touched in years, reading comprehension she'd nearly forgotten, history that felt like stories from someone else's world. At first, Jasmine sat stiffly at the desk, afraid to make mistakes. But her tutor, a patient older woman named Lorraine, had the same calm spirit Margaret had in her lucid moments. "You're not behind," Lorraine told her. "You're beginning, and beginnings are powerful." Slowly, Jasmine believed her. For the first time, Jasmine learned discipline not for survival, but for growth. She set alarms. She filled notebooks. She underlined words. She asked questions without apologizing first. Every accomplishment, no matter how small, rebuilt a piece of her self-worth. Every gold star Lorraine put at the top of a worksheet felt like a tiny victory for the girl she used to be and the woman she was becoming. Wisdom from Margaret. Jasmine visited Margaret every evening after studying. The older woman's lucidity came in waves. Sometimes she knew Jasmine's face instantly. Other times she blinked in confusion. But during the clear moments, Margaret's wisdom became a lifeline. "Kindness isn't weakness," she told Jasmine one night. "It's strength wearing a soft coat." Another evening, "The world will try to tell you your worth is measured in money. Don't listen. Worth is measured in who runs toward others when everyone else runs away." And once, as Jasmine tucked a blanket around her, "You saved me, but you also saved a part of yourself, didn't you?" Jasmine froze, then nodded. She didn't speak it aloud, but Margaret knew. The night fear finally let go after nearly a month, something shifted, quietly, almost invisibly. Jasmine came home from tutoring to find Catherine and Margaret sitting at the dining table playing cards. David yelled from the kitchen for someone to help him before he set the house on fire again. A candle flickered on the counter, snow fell gently outside, and soft music played through hidden speakers. It felt warm, safe, real, and for the first time since she'd walked through the mansion's doors, Jasmine's shoulders relaxed. She wasn't a guest anymore. She wasn't a burden. She wasn't someone surviving moment to moment. She was part of this. That night, she fell asleep without shoes on. The first sign she believed she wasn't going anywhere. The journey when Lorraine finally said, "You're ready." Jasmine almost didn't believe her. The GED exam was scheduled for a chilly Friday morning. Jasmine sat at the testing center with trembling hands, staring at the digital clock flashing 8:58 that David had driven her there. He squeezed her shoulder before she entered. "You've got this. You survived Chicago winters. A test is easy." She cracked a smile. The exam took hours. Math drained her. Science surprised her. Writing revived something deep in her. When she pressed the final submit button, her entire body shook. Results would take 6 weeks, 0.6 weeks of second-guessing, 0.6 weeks of pacing, 0.6 weeks of Margaret patting her hand saying, "You passed, dear. My bones tell me." 6 weeks of David teasing, "If you don't pass, I'll take the test for you." 6 weeks of Catherine constantly reminding her that her worth wasn't defined by a score, but Jasmine wanted the score for herself. She wanted proof she wasn't broken. The envelope 6 weeks later, a plain white envelope arrived addressed to Jasmine Rose Carter. The middle name borrowed from her grandmother, the last name added temporarily to Catherine's paperwork. Her hands trembled as she opened it. She stared, blinking. Reading again, 0.91 SD percentile. Not just passing, not just doing okay. Exceeding expectations, exceptional. She didn't hear David cheering. She didn't hear Catherine gasp and cover her mouth. She didn't hear Margaret whisper, "That's my girl." All she heard was her grandmother's voice in her memory. "You are more than what the world gave you." Tears slid down Jasmine's cheeks. Not sad ones, not scared ones, the kind she'd never felt before. Relief that she'd finally proven to herself what everyone else had seen from the beginning, that the celebration of something more. That night, Catherine insisted on a celebration dinner. They ordered Jasmine's favorite foods, even though she didn't know she had favorites until that night. The table glowed with candles. Laughter echoed through the dining hall. Margaret held Jasmine's hand the entire time, repeating, 91st percentile. "Oh, your grandmother is dancing in heaven." When dessert arrived, a chocolate cake with "We're proud of you," Jasmine piped in white icing. She stared at it for a long moment before whispering, "I've never had a cake with my name on it." The table fell quiet. Catherine touched her cheek. "Get used to it." David raised his glass. "To our girl." Margaret squeezed her hand. "To family." Jasmine swallowed hard. Family. She looked around the table. The warm lights, the smiling faces, the hands reaching for hers. And something inside her clicked into place. Not fear, not doubt, not the urge to run. Belonging. Her voice cracked as she whispered to herself, "So, this is what family feels like." And for the first time in her life, she believed she deserved it. Years passed, but Jasmine never forgot the night that had rewritten her life. The night she froze, prayed, fought, and held onto a stranger as the world slept. The night she learned that kindness could be a lifeline, both for the one giving it and for the one receiving it. To BY21, she walked across her college campus with books in her arms and purpose in her step. She was studying social work, not because it was easy, but because she understood the weight of a cold night, the sting of invisibility, and the power of one hand reaching out in the dark. She became the kind of advocate she once needed. She interned at shelters, spoke at youth centers, and wrote essays about trauma, resilience, and second chances. And slowly, the same city that once passed her by began to see her. One autumn evening, while volunteering at a youth program, she met a girl no older than 16. Thin jacket, guarded eyes, shoes too worn for the coming winter. Jasmine recognized the posture instantly, the stance of a kid ready to run and expecting no one to follow. The girl avoided eye contact. "I don't need help." Jasmine crouched to meet her gaze, her voice soft but steady, the same tone she'd used years ago behind a restaurant vent. "You don't have to do this alone." The girl blinked, stunned by the sincerity. A crack of hope appeared where fear had lived. And in that small moment, Jasmine understood something profound. She wasn't saving people. She was passing on what had been given to her, a legacy of kindness. While Jasmine grew into her calling, Catherine was building something of her own. Inspired by the girl who saved her mother, she founded the Margaret Stone Foundation for Youth Empowerment, a program offering shelter, education, and mentorship to homeless teens. Jasmine didn't just join the foundation. She became part of its leadership, shaping programs, designing outreach systems, and mentoring kids who walked the same cold streets she once had. David volunteered too, running workshops and treating every teen like a younger sibling. And Margaret, on her good days, sat in a warm chair, greeting every visitor with a smile and the same soft wisdom that had guided Jasmine through her darkest months. The Beaumonts didn't just welcome her. They became a family strengthened by the night, They all narrowly survived. The plaque on the mansion steps, right where Catherine had once cried out her mother's name, now stood a polished bronze plaque. Margaret had insisted on the words, saying, "People should know what happened here. They should feel it." The inscription read, "In memory of the night that saved us all. Home is where someone waits for you. Family is who stays." Visitors often asked, "Who does it refer to?" And the family would smile, because the answer wasn't simple. It referred to Margaret, rescued from the cold. It referred to Catherine, who found her mother and found Jasmine. It referred to David, who gained a sister he never expected. And it referred to Jasmine, who found not just a home, but a future to the truth she lives every day some nights. Jasmine would sit on those steps, tracing the plaque with her fingertips, remembering snowflakes falling on frozen eyelashes and the soft voice of an old woman whispering into the dark. For years, she believed she had saved Margaret. But now, with the foundation thriving, her degree nearing completion, and a family bound not by blood but by choice, she understood the deeper truth. Yes, she saved Margaret that night. But Margaret saved her too. They all saved each other. And because of that single moment of courage, a legacy of warmth, hope, and home began. Every day you face a choice to walk away, or to stay to look through someone, or truly see them. Jasmine was just 17, freezing invisible with nothing left in her name. Yet she chose kindness. She chose to save someone who couldn't save herself. And that one decision didn't just save a life. It built a family, a future, a legacy that the real question is, what will you choose? If this story touched your heart, share, and subscribe. And remember, you are never poor as long as you still have kindness.